Hey everyone, welcome to Pixel Pathfinder, where we're on a journey to find the best indie games. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button for more great indie games coverage. In this video, we're checking out the Steam Games Festival Play What's Next in February, a festival that's showcasing upcoming games for 2021. There are over 500 playable demos, and in this video, we're specifically taking a look at the puzzle tab, where I'm going to highlight some of the games that I think look really interesting and are worth giving a play. Now, something I wanted to mention with the puzzle genre specifically is there is a lot of overlap with this genre. There are plenty of games where they have a puzzle or two and they throw the puzzle tag on, but the core focus on the game isn't necessarily the puzzles. It might be platforming or adventure. So in this video, I try to focus on highlighting the games that had the puzzle mechanics as one of, if not the main core gameplay elements. The other ones I'll be saving for other videos, so there's going to be a lot of adventure games that have puzzles that are going to be covered in the adventure tab when we get there. But for this one, I wanted to focus specifically on the ones that look like they had a heavy amount of puzzle solving as the main mechanic. So we're going to kick things off with a game called Fate of Kai, which is really strange. It claims to be a new kind of adventure. And in the text here, it says solve complex puzzles, travel through time, and manipulate characters and ideas, which all sounds great. And they definitely have puzzle heavy tags on the game. It's got an interesting comic book art style, but as I'm looking through the video, the majority of what I can see for gameplay here is kind of just plugging in different words and seeing how they pan out in the comic, which doesn't really feel like a puzzle to me if you're just plugging in a word, and then if it doesn't work, you just go back and plug in a different word. That's more like trial and error than anything else, but I might be missing some stuff that you can't get from video here. Definitely will need to check out the demo for this one to see how heavily puzzle-based it is, but it definitely looks interesting, and I like the comic book art style, so I wanted to mention it in this video. Next, we have Dorfromantic. This is a game that showed up in the strategy video that I put out. And instead of repeating a whole bunch of commentary I made there, you guys can check that out if you want. But the general gist of this is that you are creating a landscape by placing down tiles. However, these tiles can only be placed in a certain way. You have to kind of match the existing terrain elements. And so that lends a sort of casual, very peaceful puzzle element to this game, which I do think is as much a part of the game as the actual landscape and village building itself. So I definitely would recommend checking this one out if you want a relaxing casual puzzle game. Next, we have Zinworld, which is a lot like Dorfromantic. I personally think Dorfromantic is kind of looking like the better of the games in this genre, but with free demos out, you might as well check them both out and see which one you like the best. In this case, this is another one where you are creating a landscape piece by piece with different tiles and trying to create the perfect situation for your residents to live in. This one does look a little bit different because it has existing items and stuff floating out in space that you kind of have to connect to in order to access. So it does have some differences between itself and Dorfromantic, which is why I said, you know, if there's free demos for both and you think they look interesting, you might as well check them both out. Next, we have yet another game that kind of looks the same as Dorfromantic, but this one definitely puts itself on a different pedestal in a sense. This is another one where you are kind of working with this hex-based country, but in this one, you are actually trying to set up a transport network for the company. So you're not necessarily building a country or a landscape in itself, but you are using a pre-existing one and trying to connect a transport network to get resources from point A to point B to point C to point D. It definitely looks pretty interesting as well, and a different twist on the whole tile-based landscape building, which I think looks pretty enjoyable. Next, we have Ponbarian, which is a weird like chess game with barbarians. I mean, that's really all there is to sum up here. It has roguelike elements, so you're going to be playing the game and seeing how far you can get throughout the game, fighting different enemies, and as you do so, you're going to be using various chess mechanics, and if you fail, then you start over again, and you're able to try and see if you can progress any further. It does look like it has possibly a card-based mechanic. You can see here in the screenshot where it looks like you're able to choose a chess piece whose moves you get to mimic on your particular turn. So it looks like in this case, if you wanted to, you could play the bishop card and then move as a bishop would, or you could play the rook card and move like a rook. So, sorry, that's not the rook. My bad. I have played chess. But this looks pretty interesting if you're into chess, you're into roguelikes, and you like the barbarian aesthetic. Next, we have a pretty traditional looking point and click game. This one is looking more puzzle focused than it is story focused. A lot of these point and click adventures are more story focused, so I did not include them in this video. This one, however, looks like it has a lot of hidden object aspects, puzzle solving, environmental puzzles, and stuff as well. So if you want a point and click game that is a little heavier on those puzzle elements, Growbot is looking like a pretty good one. Next up, we have Some, which is Slay Uncool Monsters. And this is a math game, essentially. So you have monsters that you're going to be fighting, and it will present you with math equations. And you have to solve them with the tiles that are available on the bottom of the screen in order to defeat or deal damage to the monsters. Now, so far, most of these math problems don't look incredibly difficult, so maybe this is a better game to play or to hand off to your kids or your young friends or your nephews or, you know, that sort of age group. But it does look like a really fun version that even if you just like math and you just kind of want to test your own like basic math speed skills, it still looks like a lot of fun to play. I think the graphic design on this one is really charming and interesting as well. Next up, we have Lab Rat. Lab Rat looks like a very specific type of puzzle game where you're going to be pushing environmental objects around on a grid in order to solve puzzles where you essentially have to prevent yourself from taking damage or being harmed in order to get to the end of a level. You're basically a lab rat. You're being experimented on and you're trying to figure out these puzzles in order to make it to the next puzzle. There's over 100 different puzzles in this genre, and if this is the kind of puzzles that you're into, then this looks like it's going to be a pretty good game to check out. Next, we have Dr. Livingstone. Dr. Livingstone is a pretty straightforward, again, a adventure kind of puzzle, hidden object logic adventure here. Looks a lot like a visual novel or a point-and-click adventure game, but again, I highlighted this one because the emphasis here is on the logic and puzzle portions more so than it is on the actual exploration and adventure stuff. It also has a pretty unique theme that I haven't seen in a lot of these type of games, so it might be interesting to many of you out there looking for something a little bit fresh. Now we're getting into the stuff that I'm actually pretty excited about. And the first game up here is going to be Lost Words Beyond the Page. Now this is a game that's, I think, has been hyped a decent amount. But this is a game where you use words to solve puzzles. And unlike our Fate of Kai over here, this one actually does look like you use the words to solve puzzles. If you pay attention to the video, you'll see that you are moving words around both in your notebook and you're moving them in the environment in order to make decisions about what your story is going to be, and also in order to affect the environment and solve puzzles. This looks really unique, really interesting. I don't know if it's going to be an overly exciting game, but it does look like it's going to be a game that has a deep and immersive story and maybe can pull on some heartstrings, or I don't know, it could just be the soundtrack, which is pretty awesome as well. But you can see here that they are using like the rise word in order to bring these platforms up. I'm not sure if the puzzles themselves are going to be complicated at all, or if they're going to be pretty straightforward like that. But either way, if they are decently complicated, that'll present a nice challenge for you. And if not, if they're a little bit more on the simple side, then again, this might be another good game to pass along to someone who's a little bit younger. Next, we have Sonority. So this is not really a platform game. It's kind of an exploration game, a puzzle game where you are using music to solve environmental puzzles. So in this case here, they were playing musical notes in order to make a platform drop. And that's kind of the gist of what you're doing in this game. You're going to be using your musical note combinations in order to remove obstacles from your path and solve puzzles. It looks pretty interesting. I'm very much into music, play some instruments myself, and so I always like to see these music-based games pop up and give them a shot. Next, we have Jelly is Sticky, and this is a game that looks weird, but I think also looks really cool. And so pay attention to what's going on in the video because it kind of tells you how this game is going to go. Essentially, you are a piece of jelly, and you go across these maps, these levels, and you collect more jelly because jelly is sticky, and you're using the jelly to solve different puzzles. In a lot of these puzzles, it looks like you are trying to cover up specific icons on the map with jelly in order to solve them, but it looks like there's a lot more going on here as well. This definitely looks like a pure puzzle game where that's 100% of the gameplay is just figuring out how to solve the puzzles. And I think it looks pretty interesting. And I'm weirdly excited to try this one out. Next, we have Block Splode, which is a physics-based simulation puzzle game where your goal is to explode blocks in order to try to cause as much destruction as possible and to get as much of the building or architecture that you are exploding underneath the water. So if you're into these physics-based puzzle games or you just like to blow stuff up, this looks like a pretty good game to check out. Next, we have Cadence. So Cadence is another music-based game where essentially you are going to relax, solve problems, and make music. This is going to provide you with various tiles and pieces of music that you can set up in order to produce different melodies. It looks pretty complicated. Definitely looks like a heavier, more engineering-minded, more progression and programming based game focused on music. I think it looks really interesting. It's an experimental sandbox, but it is going to have some puzzles and stuff available as well. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit heavier, on the heavier side of puzzle solving, or if you just really like to play around with music and audio, Cadence looks like a pretty sweet game. And getting into the final three here, we have Triversal. Triversal is a awesome looking game. I really like the music and sound effects in this one. Your goal here is to take this orb of light and to hover it over a black hole by using the various attachments and items that are shown off in the video. So you're going to be connecting these various pieces in order to get the orb over to where it can hover over the black hole. This is a spatial puzzle experience and it looks really, really fun. I think this is the perfect kind of casual style puzzle game that you can just kind of crank up and sit back and relax, enjoy the music, enjoy the visuals, and try to not feel like an idiot when it takes you forever to figure out one of these puzzles. Next up, we have Escape Simulator, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is an escape room experience And since this basically puts you in a single room trying to find your way out, I thought this was very puzzle focused, and you're trying to solve, the mystery and figure out how to get out of this room. I really like the art style and the theme of this one. I think it looks really good, and I'm excited to try out the demo and see how long it takes me to get out of one of the rooms. I'm going to guess that it's going to be a pretty long time, because I'm not great at puzzle games, but that being said, this does look like a pretty sweet one, and if you've ever wanted to try out an escape game yourself, well, now there's a free demo for you to do that. And finally here, the last game is one that I'm actually really excited about, and maybe you won't be, but I definitely am. This is Merge and Blade. It's a combination of a puzzle game, like a match 3 style puzzle game, almost like a Super Bubble Blast or whatever it was called style game with an auto battler. So to understand what's going on with this one, you kind of need to, see it in the video or to see it through the screenshots. But essentially what happens is you have a couple of phases when you go into a level. So first off, you have this initial phase where you are given these different units, and they're almost kind of like Tetris pieces in a sense, where you can swap the positioning of them around, and then you're going to drop them into this grid, which works like a Tetris grid. Once you drop them, you're going to get another set, and you're going to again manipulate those to drop them onto the grid. If you can line up 3 or 4 of the same ones, once your time runs out, it's going to combine those units into stronger units. So you can see here, this particular combination made what looks to be like a knight. And then they're going to drop in some more. They're going to make some more combinations. And then these guys are going to charge off to the next screen, where they're going to have an auto battle fight against the enemies. So it looks really interesting to me. I really like this concept. It kind of reminds me of a different take on Heroes of Might and Magic, Clash of Heroes, which is a long-time favorite game of mine in the puzzle genre, where you essentially have to match units together to create stronger ones. Now, this one does take on the auto battler aspect of combat, as opposed to the sort of simultaneous turn board against board format that Clash of Heroes does. But that being said, it has that sort of match 3 thing that I really wanted and really enjoyed in Clash of Heroes. There's also, as you can see on the menu, we can jump back to it here, wherever it went, there's a campaign. There's 2 different campaigns. There's a 2-player version, a roguelike version, and a defense version. So there's multiple modes going on here, and this is a game that I am definitely excited to check out. I like, out of everything on this list, this is by far the most exciting thing for me personally, even though I think there are a lot of other great games on this list. So let me know if you think that I missed anything on the puzzle tab. Keep it in mind that, my emphasis here was that these games have the majority of their core gameplay focused on puzzle solving and not necessarily just exploring or adventuring. If you saw something in the video that you're really excited about, try out the demo and let me know what you thought about the game in the comment section below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoy it. Also, throw a comment on it if you want. If you do both those things, YouTube loves it. I love it as well and definitely appreciate it. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button for more great indie games coverage here on the channel coming up. Hope you guys are having fun with whatever indie games you are playing, and I hope that I helped you discover a brand new game to play. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.